All right, hey guys, welcome to Free Will, Science, and Religion. I'm here. I'm Michael Laster. I'm here with Chandler Klebs and the very famous George Ortega. and Today we're going to talk about politics and how it relates to no free will and questions, regarding political parties and how might no free will state or causal state be organized? So first up, I wanted to talk a bit about the Republican debate since it's a current issue. It just happened like 2 days ago, and it's clear to me. Feel free to chime in, either of you guys, but it's clear to me that the foundation or the sort of GOP framework is based upon the idea of free will. Just all the policies, all the ideologies, it's very much under a free will mindset. And um, how how does that stand out to you? Because I have my opinions,
I agree with you.
about how it's obvious. But
I agree with you
go ahead.
completely. Oh yeah, like for example, they'll say let's say a lot of poor people end up in jail or without jobs and stuff, and they'll say, well, not everybody does. So they basically try to make individuals responsible for what they do instead of understanding that our culture so strongly conditions and influences and compels people. Our culture, for example, with a lot of poor people, we've built a world that the kinds of opportunities the middle class and the rich have aren't available to the poor. Now, here's the thing. So, yes, we understand this, but the Republicans don't get it, and the Democrats, I think they get it, but I don't think they don't have the guts to take the Republicans on this because they're afraid that like if they start saying that nobody has a free will, then all of a sudden the church will be against them. So the Democrats should have this as an issue, but they just don't have the guts.
Agreed. The Republicans are much better at putting their ideologies into practice than Democrats, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, here's sort of my take on the politics issue because I mean I don't really read up on official politics stories, but everything I know of politics really comes from what I see my friends post on Facebook. But you know what, guys, it matches what you're saying because I'm finding out, it's usually the Republicans who are against welfare programs. They're against anything that helps the poor, and they literally believe that you can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps even if you have no boots.
Exactly.
That's how I've heard it said before. And what's interesting about it is like I really don't trust politics in general. Like I don't really trust any political party or because I really just think people are into politics for the money is what I really think about it. So, but yeah, it's very interesting. I think that there's so much free will belief. It probably just in the culture in general that it probably has infected any type of politics at all. But it sounds like the Republicans are especially bad on this.
Yeah, yeah. Especially like you said, when it comes to being against welfare programs, um, even social issues like gay marriage, right? They specifically in the debate they said, I, I could still love someone even if I don't agree with them, as if being gay is like some idea thing, like an opinion you have.
I know that they talk about it. They talk about, oh, I don't agree with someone or I don't agree with their lifestyle. And here's the deal. First of all, having a certain sexual orientation is not an opinion. It is not even a lifestyle necessarily, because a
Right.
lifestyle would be more what somebody does in their life. But the way I look at it is that some people just biologically or through maybe some other environmental influence have a certain sexual orientation, and I consider I consider this thing against, you know, this how they're against gay marriage. Well, I look at that as kind of like interracial marriage, how people were against that, in a certain sense, because I don't really see it as being that different of an issue because at the bottom you are saying that these two people can't be married due to factors which they did not choose. No one chooses their gender. Nobody chooses their sexual orientation. Nobody chooses, their skin color either. But a lot of people get that. Even the free will believers who think we have limited free will still get that. And like I first was introduced to that idea, like realizing, well, we don't choose any of our biological desires or our basic traits, because what it comes down to is it is sexism. This thing about why someone would be against the same sex marriage, and I realized I used to just think, oh, it was wrong because I was taught that way as growing up a Christian in these churches. I just heard it was wrong, but as soon as I analyzed it more in detail, I'm like, well, I don't
All
see
right, I
harm.
want to try to focus us. Basically, like, even though the Democrats, really, don't have the guts to take this on full strength, Obama did actually in the 2012 campaign. He basically made the statement that it's called the "You didn't build that" statement, and it was like I can read actually the remark that he made. It was within the context of his belief. I'm reading from Wiki that the wealthy citizens should pay higher taxes to serve the public good. He said, there are a lot of wealthy, successful Americans who agree with me because they want to give something back. They know they didn't. Look, if you've been successful, you didn't get there on your own. If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Someone helped you create this unbelievable American system that we have that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you've got a business, you didn't build that. Someone else made that happen. So basically, like Obama, and now he got some flack for that, but like, basically, it's the truth. We're not islands. When we build stuff, when we create things, political things, bridges, roads, and all, it's not just one person. It's a collection of us. Now, sure, some of us have the abilities to let's say manage to kind of like orchestrate everything and all. But essentially, like what happens in this world is a collection of all of us. And like the more that the politicians talk about this, the better the world will be.
Yeah, and I actually listened to that on YouTube. I listened to a clip where he said that exact thing. So yeah, and that was interesting because I agree with that. Nobody is did anything all by themselves. Nobody built anything all by themselves, and that's the key message. So I'm agreed on that.
Yeah, I think any move towards recognizing that, something once believed to be sort of this autonomous entity in a vacuum is actually part of this interconnected network, which is what he was doing, really sheds light on the situation and totally it gets people closer to realizing a no free will mindset.
Yeah, and George, you said that he took a lot of flack for that.
Well, yeah, naturally, like they, because like, again, like what Mike was saying is the Republicans are so into this, like, no, it's all about the individual. It's not about society. In other words, if one person can do something, then everybody should be able to do it. If one person doesn't do something, then everyone should like, be able to prevent themselves from doing it. And like, so, I mean, and it's absurd. It just like doesn't take into consideration the genetics. I mean, our theme now is like overweightness, is obesity, and like who for like there are so many people you tell them, oh yeah, you should be able to lose weight. Like this other person lost weight, why can't you? I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah, this myth that because one person did it, that means everybody else can do it, which comes to a basic belief that we're all in the same playing field, that we're all playing with the exact same deck of cards, and that they are in the exact same order at the beginning of the game.
Yeah. I I really do think like obesity and wealth are the best examples of that.
Yeah, I would say the wealth thing, the obesity thing, the sexuality thing, and the religion thing too. What determines what religion you believe, you know?
And let's not forget
Right.
crime. I mean, like, why is it that like the vast proportion of, let's say, violent crimes or certain kinds of crimes are committed by poor black and Hispanic youth? I mean, because they're greatly. I mean, we in the middle class and we who are, who have more money, that we aren't subject to the kinds of prejudices of being black in an inner city and all. Like, life is so much easier for us. Like a lot of these kids, like, they're kids and they see their best friends die in gang warfare and stuff. I mean, like, to say that, like, because Daniel Dennett, I think, he says, like, well, everybody has the same opportunity. That is so absurd. How can anybody say that?
Oh, I know. Because, James B. Miles quoted Daniel Dennett a lot in his book, The Free Will Delusion. And I'm like, yeah, this is some crazy stuff Dennett was saying. Yeah, pretty much that same
Yeah,
thing.
again, it's especially harmful because, like, what happens is, like, the poor, like, or especially the youth, even like, they just, like, they are not only are they punished, they're not helped to, like, to get their lives together and all, but then they're blamed for being poor and stuff. I mean, like, we can't take credit for being in the middle class or being rich and all. That's who we are. Even if we're self-made, even if we have, like, the savvy to, like, to earn vast sums of money. I mean, like, that's because, like, we have certain abilities. I mean, they're given to us. So, like, to blame these young, kids for things that are, like, not in their control at all, and then to punish them as severely as we do. The politicians, both parties, but especially the Democrats, the Republicans are clueless on this. It's up to the Democrats to bring this issue out into this election and start getting people talking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And adding to the list of, sexuality and weight and wealth is also mental illness to a large extent, and
Yes, that's big.
especially like addiction and depression.
Yeah. And another thing is, for example, like epilepsy, you know, because some people, if like they have some kind of epilepsy, well, it can be very dangerous. There's certain things that they can't do, like for example, they may not be able to say ever drive a car because they might have a seizure, and also, if somebody has a condition, even if there is medication that helps them with that, well, that's going to cost money. You're going to have money, or you're going to have some kind of insurance, and it's not up to people whether they're able to get that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and actually, Mike, I'm glad you brought up the medical conditions, mental illness, and all, because a lot of people say, well, if we abandon this delusion of free will, and it is a delusion. You're talking about mental illness. This free will thing could not be more of a delusion. It's really, pathological. But they're saying if you cure people of this delusion, if you cure this country of this delusion, then like, you can't hold anybody responsible. There'll be anarchy. That's absurd, because the medical profession, the psychiatric system, is a perfect example of how doctors do not blame patients and clients for getting depressed, for being anxious, for having these conditions. Yet these patients, these people know that just because they have a condition doesn't give them license to do whatever they want. In other words, like, everybody still has to play by the rules. So this is a system that works. The medical profession, psychiatric profession, rewards, certain patients, clients, for proper behavior and punishes them for improper behavior. But they don't need the free will belief, this free will delusion, to be able to do that. And we can apply that same reasoning across the entirety of society.
Yes, and there's definitely ways through reinforcement, because I think that reward and punishment to a certain extent does recondition people, you know.
Hmm.
And here's an example. Like, for example, Rediscover, the mental health facility near where we live, they have outings. They have regular outings, that they can get. A van will take, clients to places. But here's how it works. If they're a no-show, Like if they don't show up when the van's there to get them, or they say they're not coming, well then basically if they do that repeatedly, then they get moved to the bottom of the list, because they're not they're it's expected, that there'll be no show again, but those people might learn through that not to do that also, you know if they want to go.
Right. It's a good point.
All right, another way how this free will thing is so crucial to politics, especially this election cycle. You'll notice that people get really ugly. Like Donald Trump calling Rosie O'Donnell a pig and all. I mean, like basically what happens in politics. People are constantly blaming each other. They're blaming one party's blaming the other party's blaming the other. The rich blame the poor blame the rich. I mean, like everybody's at each other, especially in political seasons. So like to the extent that people get that no, nobody has a free will, nothing is up to any of us. Fine, we may have our disagreements, but at least we'll explore them and we'll champion them, and with civility, with the proper respect for other people. Because there's so much, yeah.
And speaking of Trump, he's the perfect example because, he'll, on one side of the coin, he'll go around blaming everyone else. But when it comes to himself, he's like one of the most prideful, arrogant, narcissistic people on the planet because of his accomplishments. And, I think, I don't think he could sustain that self-image, if he were to realize that he had no free will over his, billions of dollars or whatever he has.
We should challenge him on it. We should say, Trump, listen, you got where you got because there were reasons, and these reasons were beyond your control. Either you had a certain kind of intelligence, or you had certain kinds of connections, certain kind of abilities, and you didn't give yourself those.
Yeah.
Well, he inherited most of it.
Yeah, and guys, there's something else that's important to point out, because obviously we do live in a society full of all kinds of humans, and we're all interconnected and dependent on everyone else. But even if you take a hypothetical situation, like let's just say that for whatever reason, every other human on the planet dies, but I'm the only one left, okay? I would still understand that even though I might have more freedom to do as I wish, because no human could stop me, I would still understand that anything I do, like growing my own food, it's like I did not choose what the dirt does. I do not choose what the plants do. I do not choose what the weather does. And so all of these impersonal forces, outside of humans and other animals, are still out of my control just as much. And
Yeah.
credit for that is just insane.
And you don't even choose which edible vegetation you prefer.
That's true. You don't choose what food you like, and you know what? That's another thing that's powerfully related to the overweightness topic, because some people are going to find it a lot harder to give up foods that they like the taste of. you know, because for some people, yeah, they might like healthier foods just as a matter of taste. Other people might like unhealthier foods, so that's part of it.
Absolutely. So in a no free will state, how do you think that would be organized? Because we were sort of debating this, whether it necessarily indicates some sort of socialism, or whether or not, luck can still play a role, luck as far as your talents and the success of your of what you strive to do can still play a role in how much money you make.
Yeah, Mike, it's not just luck. For example, you take a doctor. I admire doctors so much because they have to work so hard to become doctors. And once they're doctors, they're saving lives. They're making people's lives so much better. You have to go through 12 years of school to become a doctor. And once you become a doctor, you've got to work these doctors work nights, weekends. I mean, they work really long hours sometimes. So if somebody's gonna, first of all, if somebody has that ability, and just works that hard, yes, I think they deserve to be paid more than the rest of us who work less. So in other words, we still, I think it's wise for us to still maintain our system of rewards and punishments. If somebody wants to contribute more to society than someone else, then I think that it makes sense to even motivate that by providing certain, greater rewards, and just like we provide punishments for doing things that harm society.
Yeah, and I want to clarify on what George just said here because while we understand that nobody fundamentally deserves anything, pragmatically we would say that they deserve it, or perhaps the way I would put it would be more that doing so provides an incentive. If there is a greater reward for doing a certain thing, that provides an incentive for people to seek that too, so that's part of it because obviously there are a lot of things that are important that people need to do, but they would not be doing it if they were only paid minimum wage.
Right. So, Mike, you asked what would change. Okay, fine. You pay a doctor, several $100,000, whatever, but you don't pay people like, $100 million or $500 million or $1 billion. I think that's just absurd.
Right,
Just like
especially if like you're just banking or betting on stocks.
Right. So again, we need the incentive, but like the value of the free will thing is like, fine, you pay people as much as makes sense to motivate greater accomplishment, to inspire greater achievement. But, and just like there's limits, like we don't punish people severely, right? So that same principle should go, toward compensation and all that. But essentially, all right, there's another way how this if everybody got it, if our world lived under this no free will understanding, let's say starting tomorrow, um, think of all the animosity in the world, not just in politics, but like people like in their daily lives, just like conflicts with groups of people conflicting with other groups, individuals conflicting with other, and like basically all this conflict happens because people are blaming each other. If people understood that we're all robots, we're all puppets, no, nothing that happens has anything to do with us. We have no, we would be so much kinder and more civilized toward not just other people, but toward ourselves.
Yeah, it would be so awesome, and I really want people to get that because a lot of people say it doesn't matter whether we have a free will or not, and it matters a great deal because if people truly had some free will in the sense where they could be fundamentally responsible, even though we know it's impossible, well then, well, here's the sad thing is we would a lot of us would deserve terrible punishment if you think about that, you know and so it's actually a very good news because even though it means that yes, you can't take credit for things, and so for some people that's kind of a downer, the benefit of not feeling bad and guilty over your mistakes that you couldn't have helped doing anyway, is the greatest benefit of it. And it removes the blame of other people too, and people get along better.
Yeah, and we were talking about Donald Trump before. Mike, I think you mentioned this. There's arrogance. Like we don't take credit. Like Trump takes like so much credit for what he becomes arrogant. He just like he thinks like he's this king and stuff, and like he routinely insults people. Like so like to the extent that nobody has a free will and we get it, all of a sudden there's no reason for that. Sure, some of us are lucky. Trump's been lucky in certain ways. People are lucky, but it just like gives us a powerful reason to not become arrogant, to not just basically think we're like so. I mean, like fine, people like doctors are going to be smarter than other people. We'll have our abilities, but we won't become boastful and prideful. We'll maintain our humility, our modesty, and that would help the world so much.
I think it would also put an end to war. I mean, no
Yeah.
reason to, ever have or use weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah. And I think people, the reasons that people do war do have a lot to do with free will based hatred.
Hmm.
And you know, there are a lot of Americans, for example. I'll see them say things though. Well, we should just bomb everybody in the Middle East or something crazy like that. You know, and
Right.
and you know, you would not believe this, but you might come across these people. I call these the bomb people, like the people who still are trying to say that it was justified to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Right.
And if people are still arguing about that,
All right, well, Chandler, hold on. I mean, like with both of these points, for example, like the fear back then was the Japanese were simply not going to surrender. So basically, I'm not going to like pronounce a judgment of whether the bomb should have been dropped or not, but the intention was actually to save lives. They felt that like if they didn't drop those bombs, Japan would have continued fighting, and so many more lives would have been lost. Mike, like here's the thing. Um, Overcoming free will belief will do a lot, but like in terms of war, for example, like as climate change gets more pronounced, different countries are going to be basically in conflict over dwindling resources. Now, I think what happens, I think the point you want to make is the like if everybody like understands that nobody has a free will, then all of a sudden, yeah, I think it'll make war much less likely because like some countries, some regions might go to war for limited resources that either one of them gets it or the other, whatever. But like I think Chandler, I think what you were saying is right. A lot of these wars are founded on like this personal hatred of people in other countries, because they're different and all. And so that would be like minimized so much by our world overcoming this belief.
yes, and what I want to clarify what is actually talking about, I was talking about my mother recently told me about somebody who
Oh
was
no.
saying that the Japanese deserved to be killed. And that was a key issue because this idea of deserving, it requires the free will belief.
Requires blame. Yeah.
Yes. And also, I totally agree that if there had been no free will belief in the first place, the wars would have never started in the first place. There would not have even been an issue.
Yeah. When it comes to war, like it really, in order to really stop war the way I pictured, I was talking about it before. It really has to be pretty unanimous for all countries. Because if even if like there was some utopian no free will state, like if another country still doesn't get it and they're being aggressive, that's going to cause problems.
You're absolutely right, Mike, because here's the deal. Like, let's just say that, like for example, all of America got that nobody has a free will. Well, it might be good in America because of that, but there's still if they're like if somebody in some other country is still blaming America or other countries outside, there's still going to be a free will belief. So what we're saying is it really, for it to really end wars, it would have to be international. It would have to be a global thing where everybody agreed on this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, like, back to the politics, I mean, like, the Democrats have to develop the guts to take this on because so much, Mike, what you were saying is so right. The Republicans are so into this free will thing. It's just as delusional as their claim that climate change isn't happening. It's as delusional as their claim that there was a Garden of Eden, in creationism. I mean, these people are completely out of their minds. And, like, the Democrats need to have the guts to take them on with this.
Yeah, I think that everyone will benefit from this understanding of no free will. It'll help because yeah, I don't think that I don't think there's any quick fix, but definitely that's why it's so important that we help people get this.
Okay, Mike, we got about like half a minute left. So
Right.
you want to close the show or?
All right. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Thanks so much, Chandler and George. And thanks to our listeners. Um, Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, excellent, guys.